and welcome to Dawn News English. I'm Nadia Naqi with you for 20 minutes. So the National Security Committee resolves to take crucial steps against terrorism, and the committee has decided to hold discussions with provinces to fully implement the National Action Plan. We know that recently the resurgence of terrorism in Pakistan, there have been attacks, and most of them have been claimed by TTP, and it has been decided now that it's going to be probably now or never. As in, the government decides that there's going to be no room for anyone who lifts arm against the state. Is operation in the offing, is that the only solution? At the same time, the National Security Committee, once it met for 2 days, and what they resolved to, fight for terrorism. There were some remarks that probably have irked the Afghan Taliban's regime in Afghanistan, because Pakistan will not allow any country to have safe havens, bordering safe havens, so that it doesn't face what it has been facing. Today we have with us former Senator Afrasiab Khattak, who's going to be speaking to us about, is this the right move, and is this how we're going to deal with terrorism, and why the resurgence? Thank you so much for joining us. I would like to know the recent, the National Security Committee, as it meets and as it resolves to fight terrorism. Do you fully agree, and are you also of the opinion that this is the only way that we can actually deal with this resurgence, and something that Pakistan has been fighting for years after 9/11?
Thank you very much for having me. This TTP challenge is hardly a bolt from the blue. I think it has been there, and particularly after the occupation of Kabul by Taliban, it was very clear that there will be there'll be a blowback, there'll be an impact on Pakistan. You see, because we live in a situation where Afghanistan is not anymore a buffer state, and there is no buffer of FATA between the two countries, which work like a non-conductor for conducting political currents. I think the whole area is politicized. So anything that happens in Kabul, like the rivers, flows into Pakistan.
All right, that's what you're saying. But when you say that it was very clear after the Taliban took over in Afghanistan that we may face all of this, the other perception was that if, with this regime in Afghanistan, at least it's going to be easier for Pakistan. There's not going to be any attacks from the TTP. Neither the TTP would be used by, enemies of Pakistan to foil attacks within the country.
That seems to be more of wishful thinking. Because you see, as soon as Taliban entered Kabul, the first thing that they did was to release almost 24 or 2,500 TTP fighters who were imprisoned by the former Afghan government.
Right.
Not only that, they were free to move into Pakistan, and they were moved to freely in Afghanistan. So I think there were signs. Unfortunately, we were so bogged down in our internal political squabbles that we didn't have much time to think about regional situation, and particularly we were not able to have to tape collective wisdom to shape an Afghan policy which is viable and in the interest of Afghanistan and Pakistan.
So what you just said, and that is what exactly happened, that after the Taliban took over, there were many TTPs, probably comrades that were released. And I do recall at that time also, one of them had probably the chief, because TTP also is divided into many groups, had said that they are going to take their revenge from Pakistan. And then it was being discussed that the Afghan Taliban would help us, talk to them, or probably it was their, what is being said, it was their opinion that we sit down with TTP. Do you think that negotiating with TTP, and we had that ceasefire for a bit, was a wrong move by Pakistan?
I think Pashtun political activists, journalists, and intelligentsia were warning from the last 3 years about this possibility of a TTP challenge. But unfortunately, the ruling elites did not listen to them. I think even this negotiation thing was really very mysterious, because there was no proper consultation. Even Parliament was not properly consulted. So I think what we needed was to have a broad consultation and to get feedback from all the stakeholders, particularly from the people of Pakhtunkhwa. You see, there have been lots of demonstrations in the recent past, large scale, and they were mostly spontaneous. I mean, local grassroots organizations came up with these demonstrations, and they were they were expressing the threat from TTP, from Taliban. Unfortunately, even cases were registered against people who were demonstrating against the rise of terrorism in their areas. And they raised objection to the presence of TTP. And they raised questions, and they were very logical questions. For example, in the last few years, our state had erected, fences, barbed wire on the Devon line, and there were watchtowers, and they had assured us that after this, the terrorists would not be able to penetrate. But how come that such people on such a large scale entered Pakistan? Even senior leaders of PDM like Maulana Fazlur Rahman had been warning for the last few months. I remember 4 months back he said there were thousands of fighters in the southern districts of Pashtunkhwa province. But unfortunately, we were so busy in these political things. Dissolving assemblies or not dissolving assemblies, change of the government, and then agitations, and then long marches, that we are not able to focus on the real threat, which is the TTP, which is the terrorism. But there are also international and regional context to all this. I think we are witnessing a new round of Cold War among the big powers.
Okay, how do you see this? First, let's ask you. So right now in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, do you think there is a lot of their network that is present, or it is across Pakistan that you believe they are present?
You see, what is the silver lining in the otherwise very bleak situation is the awareness, deep awareness among the masses of Pashtunkhwa province, who, from their own experience of the past, have learned that terrorism is a menace, is a threat to their lives. These demonstrations should have been encouraged by the state, by the government, but unfortunately, it was not done so. People in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa are far ahead, and political parties are lagging behind them, and the state is also lagging behind them. So that is the only silver lining. But I think it's now spilling over to the rest of the country, because initially some people thought it will be confined to the former FATA districts, or it will be confined to KP, which was again not true. I think it has come to Islamabad, and unfortunately, if it is not stopped, it will spread over in all over the country.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And the last attack which actually was the focus, and it drew focus. It was alarming, was what happened in the capital of Pakistan. But having said that, yes, TTP does have a network, and as you rightly say, so that it's spilling over to other provinces, and they have. Especially in Balochistan and even in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, as you mentioned. But even Punjab probably was not safe, because there was one attack in Punjab, there was an attack in the capital. So, but the network is not so, it's not like Al-Qaeda, it's TTP at the end of the day. So is it so difficult to fight them? Or there are other players involved with TTP that becomes very difficult for the state to fight this terrorism?
You see, there are also spy wars. You see, psychological wars. This so-called Baloch connection with TTP is, I think, I regard it as something of a psychological warfare. You see, basically, it's TTP. It's part of Taliban. For the last 14 years, we had been saying that the Taliban is one organization. TTP is just its division of work. They have same ideology, they have same leadership, they work under the same organizations. But unfortunately, here many people were saying, no, TTP is a different entity. It is produced or created by hostile intelligence agencies. But now when those intelligence agencies are not in Kabul, who is supporting them? So it's basically the Taliban. But again, as I said, there are regional and international contexts. You see, China is building Belt and Road, connecting Eurasian heartland, building land bridge between Asia and Europe. And our CPAC is a very important part of that project. But you see, there are forces hostile to this project. And then there is also a very deep tension in Russia and Western Europe and United States. And Western powers would like to open a new front against Russia in Central Asia. So that should also be kept in mind. And I think for the best course of Pakistan would have been to de-link itself from this big power tussle and to overcome the addiction of becoming a frontline state. Unfortunately, we have addicted to remain a perpetual frontline state, which has damaged our country in the past. So I think we should have consultations, wide consultations. I think this national security meeting was good, but it was not a wide consultation. I think we need to consult all political people, parties, stakeholders, particularly representatives of the people of Pakhtunkhwa, because they are the most affected people from this in the past. And we should also keep it in mind that it can lead to new displacement, new destruction.
Santosh, when you say broader consultation, I mean the current government is actually, along with People's Party, there are so many political parties. I think only PTI was not present in this consultation. So why do you think that still it's not broader consultation?
Well, I do not know, but the pictures that I saw, the photos that I saw from the National Security Committee meeting, there were limited numbers of people. I didn't see all political parties represented. I didn't see much of Pashtuns. I would say, unfortunately, Pashtuns have been excluded, although there are around 60 million Pashtuns in Pakistan. But when it comes to Afghan policy, unfortunately, they're not included in shaping this policy or in the consultations, which are a must to have a realistic and viable and sustainable policy.
But I don't think so. It's just about the Pashtuns. When we shape such policies, what history teaches us is that hardly any political party is involved in shaping the policy. The policy is made somewhere else, and it is imposed on any political party that is in power.
I agree with you. It should be broad-based. It should be inclusive. It should include everyone. But when I say Pakhtunkhwa, because Pakhtunkhwa is the actual frontline province.
Yes, and I think you're absolutely right on that. That CMKP was not invited, which was, for probably for terrorism at least, and this is a national issue. At least all political parties should be on board and consulted. So moving further, are you trying to incline, Khattak Saab, that when you say that this is basically a war between the superpowers, that TTP is being used by one of these superpowers to create such an environment that probably draws attention of that particular superpower or the powers of the world to this region once again?
Yes, I really believe that Taliban have all the old players among terrorists of the old terror syndicate, which include Al-Qaeda, TTP, Turkish Islamic Party, ETIM, East Turkestan Islamic Movement, and other actors. And there is a new player, Daesh, or ISK, Khorasan.
Which is more of a serious threat. If it becomes, if it is a growing threat, it may become a global threat for the US especially.
That is true. But you see, this new player entered our area in 2017, and since then it has been the most lethal force when it comes to terrorist attack. You see, recently it attacked a Chinese guest house in Kabul, and before that it attacked Russian embassy. So it seems all these spectacular attacks that were conducted in the past by Haqqani network are now being conducted by ISK. So you see, there are new additions and new terrorist forces. So there are no non-state actors. You see, there are always some state actors behind these so-called state non-state actors.
Okay. Can Pakistan somehow pressurize Afghanistan for not using its soil, or not letting the terrorists use its soil against Pakistan? They have been irked by our statements, especially after the NSC. But this is what actually causes disturbance in Pakistan economically, as well as what we faced.
I agree. What you are saying is very rational, but unfortunately, our Afghan policy has not been that rational. You see, the way, for example, Pakistan provided all the facilities for the U.S. and Western war against the Soviet Union in 1980s. You see, that created an infrastructure in Pakistan, which has been producing such elements. For example, when you see Taliban, it's very difficult to detach it from Pakistan, because most of the factories have been working from the last 3 or 4 decades on our side of the dividend line. And as far as Taliban are concerned, they have very deep relations with our security agencies and other forces who have been working with them for a very, very long time. So to say that Pakistan cannot put pressure on them, I think that is an exaggeration. I think you see, it is with Pakistan's help that they have come in power in Kabul. So I think we should have a clear Afghan policy. Basically, we have a flawed policy. As long as this policy persists, Pakistan will face such vulnerabilities.
When you said earlier that Pakistan should have de-linked itself, and when we talk about China as well as US, we need to have relations with both. That a lot of our economics also run through the US. So it's very difficult for us to de-link. Yes, we need to strike a balance between the two, because China is our all-weather friend, it's our neighbor, it's always been on our side. But we can't actually stay away from the US either.
There are examples among Muslim countries who have emerged from the Cold War in a more moderate fashion, a more focus on the geo-economic. For example, Indonesia in 1960s went to the left, then it went to the right, and in both cases it was extreme, but then they gradually emerged from these extremes, and they are now a moderate Muslim country focused on geo-economics and progressing to becoming an economic power. This is what Pakistan should have been doing, but unfortunately we have not been able to implement National Action Plan. You see, National Action Plan was very good, but when it came to implementation, out of 20 points, we did not implement even a single point. You see, that's where our problem is. Pakistan should come out of the Cold War era. You see, geostrategic might have some benefit, although I have doubts about that during the Cold War. But now it's over. We should go for geoeconomics. We should get integrated in the region. We should have good relations with all powers. I'm not saying that we should have hostile relations with West. We should have good relations with them, but we should stop becoming a frontline state of the West that Pakistan was in 1970s and 1980s.
But do you not think, Afrasiab Khattak sir, that we are slowly moving towards geoeconomics, and that was a realization for the past, I think, 2-3 years now, that geoeconomics is something that will define our role within the region and even otherwise?
I think the government of Mr. Nawaz Sharif was doing that when it was removed. And we know how a creeping coup was launched to remove Mr. Nawaz Sharif. And one of the reasons for his removal was CPAC, his deep commitment with CPAC. You see, CPAC is good for Pakistan, I believe. So we should have the best of relations with the United States. If they offer anything better than CPAC in economic terms, we should look at that, and we must we consider accepting that. But if they don't have, then we should go for the CPAC. But unfortunately, we have seen the slowing of CPAC. We have seen, the recent visits and the statements. You see, TTP, they say the threat of TTP, United States will be supporting Pakistan. You see, TTP is not a superpower. Pakistan is strong enough to deal with TTP. But you see, again, there's a new alignment. We are looking at a new alignment of big power. So Pakistan needs to go ahead very carefully and to have the right type of balance. It's not only the right type of balance. Because Chinese relationship for Pakistan is now becoming far more important than its traditional relationship with the West.
Okay. My last question to you is that United States says that Pakistan has the right to defend itself. In the State Department net price says that basically they have kind of like throw their weight behind the NSC's decision. So is that good or is that bad?
I think that is bad because that will again internationalize this whole thing. I think Pakistan needs to reconsider its foreign policy, particularly its Afghan policy. We should befriend Afghanistan as a state, as a nation, rather than supporting groups there, like groups like Taliban. Taliban is a tiny minority in Afghanistan. It has yet to gain enough support in Afghanistan to become a legitimate government, a legitimate state with any constitution, etc. So I think we need to focus on geo-economic, and we need to have the right type of balance, which is going ahead with the CPEC, having normal relations with the West, where if they are prepared to invest, if they are prepared to come here with some economic cooperation, we should welcome that. But I think getting into these military things, geostrategic things of the Cold War, I think it's not the future that Pakistan would really benefit by.
Thank you so much for participating on 20 Minutes for Dawn English. Afrasiab Khattak Saab says we need to redefine our Afghan policy, we need to redefine our foreign policy, and we need to have a balance between the superpower and China. We need to...
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. So nice.
Most welcome. That's all for now. Take care. Allah Hafiz.